Welcome to this latest edition of the Cranky Curmudgeon's Corner. My name is Paul Thomas, and this edition is titled The Shit Show, Ukrainian Edition. Joining me to discuss all this is the Corner's European friend, Christina. I originally planned on waiting until summer before taking a look at the effect the Trump administration has had on America, but the onslaught has me rethinking my original plan. I made a long list of topics affected in these early months, but the February 28th Oval Office debacle starring Volodymyr Zelensky and J.D. Vance, along with President Trump, has moved the shit show Ukrainian edition to the top of the list. A classmate of ours, joining a text group of classmates, provided a quote from New Jersey Senator Cory Booker describing what he saw at that Oval Office meeting with President Zelensky and J.D. Vance and a whole bunch of press. Quote, a weary warrior, a beleaguered man who lost thousands of friends and countrymen to unjust aggression. He was shown no grace by small bullies with big titles who disgrace the nation they lead, end quote. I realize, Christina, that you never claimed to speak for all of Europe, but as an individual living in a European country, how does Senator Booker's description of what he saw at that meeting strike you?
I'd say there's actually it's a very good description. I did not watch the whole meeting, I have to say. I saw a summary of it then in the news. So I got the gist of it, but I didn't see every detail. But how Zelensky looked said it all. I mean, and it's true, that man has been president of a country that has been at war for more than 2 years now. And that country did not start the war. It doesn't matter what other people say. Like, I'm sure Putin says that possibly, but they did not start the war. And yet he must have felt like everybody was against him in that room. And forgive me for saying that, but the way that Trump and Vance is the other
Right.
man, the way they talked, they sounded like petty, like small, I'm sorry to say that, but like children in a bad way, childish behavior. It's like, oh, sorry, you have not been thankful enough. And I've seen summaries of where Zelensky's on the news and says again and again how thankful he is, not just to the president of the United States, but to the American people in general. So obviously he has said that many times, and yet they keep on going on about that. And it's childish, it's petty, and it's so not worthy of the leader of a country. I'm sorry to say that, but that was really, that left a bad impression. I mean, not that I have ever been a fan of Trump, but that was awful. And yes, I think that description is very accurate. And the fact that Zelensky had to go through that, I mean, basically he knows he needs all the help he can get for his country. That is why he talks to Trump even now. He has to do that. He doesn't really have a choice if he wants to be a good president to his country. So yeah, that was bewildering.
It appeared to me that French President Emmanuel Macron at this moment is the voice of Europe's support of Ukraine and the continued characterization of Putin as the aggressor. He seemed pretty solid in his Oval Office meeting, it was some days before, in command of the facts and quite willing to correct Trump's multiple attempts at disinformation. Does, Christina, Macron's articulation of his position about the war represent, in your belief, a consensus of European governments?
I would say it depends on where that government stands politically, because the countries that are allies of Putin will definitely have a different view on that. Like Belarus, for example, they work together with him, as far as I know.
Sure.
So also Hungary under the government of Orban, like he's also an authoritarian ruler. Sure, they are on Putin's side, but if you go like the European Union, most of them, I would say there is a consensus, yes. And I think they always, I saw like something on the news where they said they always sent Macron because apparently Trump likes him. It's like he's very fond of the French language and how Macron speaks. So maybe that's why Macron is the spearhead of the European Union when it comes to that. Yeah, but I would say when you go like the Western European side, yes, I think there is a consensus, obviously, about Putin being the aggressor. If you go towards the East, maybe not so much. And that might also have something to do with the proximity to Russia and also Russia being a threat, obviously, like to some countries there. I mean, now that we see what they are doing to the Ukraine, other countries close by are kind of scared and have like spent a lot more on the army, etc. lately because they think it's necessary, unfortunately.
Okay, you mentioned Belarus and you mentioned Hungary. Are there any others that you would put in that category besides those two allies of Putin that are?
I don't think so. Like I do not have the politics of every European country in my head. I did not do that much research, but I think those are the two countries that I know about right now. Other countries like Poland, for example, is very worried about the situation, but they are in the European Union and they are behind also Macron, etc. So as far as I know, I think these are the only two. I know that there are some also like far right governments, like in Italy. I mentioned that last time. I haven't heard anything specifically. If they were to support Putin, I think that's very unlikely. I haven't heard anything like that. No.
Well, that's pretty good. Two out of all the rest of Europe. I think that's a pretty good indication.
As far as I know, yeah.
The day before the Zelensky blow up, UK Prime Minister Starmer and Trump had a very chummy Oval Office brofest, adoringly and blissfully avoiding any references to who started the war, who was the invader and aggressor, and who was being victimized and oppressed. It reminded me of how skillfully Hitler played Chamberlain in 1938, which resulted in the Nazi occupation of Czechoslovakia. One day later, this is the day after his meeting with Trump, with the Zelensky meeting with Trump took place, when he observed the true Trump position of give me everything and eat this shit sandwich I'm generously offering you, Starmer must have felt like he was a fool. How much do you think Europe feels it can rely on the UK after Brexit, and especially after we all saw how Starmer behaved in the Oval Office? Do you trust the UK?
Yes, I do. And for different reasons. First of all, Starmer is not the prime minister that was responsible for the Brexit. He's actually of the Labour Party. He's of the opposition, the ones that were actually against Brexit. But he is now in the situation that Labour was elected and they have to deal with the situation. And it was, a decision of, unfortunately, the majority of the people in Great Britain. So there's not really anything they can do about that now. There have been talks about Great Britain rejoining the European Union, but I don't think that's very likely in the near future. They try to improve their relationship with the European Union. Definitely, Starmer has been trying to do that. So I think that's a positive sign. In terms of the his behavior in the Oval Office, do I think that was good? No. Do I understand why he did that? In a way, yes, because diplomacy.
Right.
They try, especially Great Britain tries to be a mediator between Europe and the United States. They see themselves always as that sort of link. And it's understandable because of history, et cetera, et cetera. They are closer to the United States than the rest of Europe. So he tries to be a mediator. Is that the right word? Mediator, yeah, I think.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
that is.
okay.
Mediator, yes.
Yeah. And I think I would not want to be in the shoes of any leader of a European country at the moment trying to deal with Trump, because we all know that he doesn't really listen to logic or rational thoughts sometimes. He is very much in his own world. You have to be extremely careful what you say to him. So if you are trying to confront him, that will not help. So I'm glad that Macron tried his very best to stop Trump from saying something wrong. But I would say Starmer was probably very, very cautious of what he said. And did he? I mean, he must have felt horrible when he saw what happened then with Zelensky in the Oval Office, obviously. But we all know that if we want to achieve anything, you have to try to deal with Trump, unfortunately. I mean, logically speaking, we need the support of the United States. Taking the United States out of the equation, I don't even know. I mean, as we talked last time about that, the European countries now spend more money on the army, etc., because they think they have to. Yes, it would be still preferable if the United States were still on our side. The manpower, the logistics, everything, especially in times of war. I'm sorry that I'm sort of stammering here, but it's like, obviously we want the United States on our side, and then you try to do your best to deal with Trump in a way that will possibly be successful. Yeah, and I don't think talking Tacheles, as we say in German, would work with him at all. Talking like no nonsense. I don't think he would stop probably the whole conversation and just leave. That is my impression. So while I do not think that it was great what Starmer did, I understand that it leaves the wrong impression. I understand why he did it. And yeah, you can debate whether or not that is just enabling him, Trump, in what he does, or enabling Putin in a way as well. But the prime ministers have to decide that. Like,
you said something that struck me about having the United States on your side. Do you feel that the possibility exists that the United States may not be on your side with this current regime?
It feels a bit like it, yeah. I mean, it is like when you hear that Trump talks to Putin on the phone all the time, like traditionally they were opponents, Russia and the Soviet Union and the United States. But in general, these are two influence spheres that didn't really work together as far as I know. And then suddenly Trump focuses so much on Putin and what he thinks and what he does, and tells Zelensky that he should do more to provide peace. I'm sorry, but the Ukraine was attacked. Obviously, they have a hard time just saying, yes, of course, we do everything Russia wants just to have peace. And by the way, I did some research on Zelensky, and I mean, it's not the first time that Russia attacked the Ukraine. They did that the first time in 2014, where they annexed like the Crimea area, etc. And back then, Zelensky was against that. He was not president yet, but he protested against it. And later, when he was president, he tried to deal with the situation and he actually wanted peace. He said that and he tried to work towards that, but it didn't work out because of Russia. So to say now, like, oh, he doesn't want peace and he should do more to that, no, that is just, it's pretty horrible, I think. Pretty horrible of the
sound a little bit nervous about it.
Oh yeah, sorry, I always digress from the point we're trying to make.
No, you made the point. The point is that you don't feel very comfortable with the relations with the United States right now.
And that is the point. Again, I'm always trying to differentiate not all of the United States. Like there are still a lot of very sensible people over there and also politicians who try to do the right thing. Like I've seen Bernie Sanders and the young lady, what is she called again? Cortez, is that her name?
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yes, and they were
AOC. We give her the AOC.
AOC, yes, like that, AOC. And Bernie Sanders are like starting this campaign of fighting oligarchy. So there are people who are still on the right side, and I'm very sure that they would try to keep good relations with Europe, but the government, no. So I still try to differentiate because, as I said, there's so many good Americans over there. So
well, we're not giving up. We're not giving up, and that's
good.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
It appears that the London meeting of European leaders, this was just several days after the Zelensky meeting in the Oval Office, was designed to get behind Ukraine after the Trump Vance disaster in the Oval Office. On March 6th, European President Ursula von der Leyen, did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, Ursula von der Leyen, yep.
Okay. Announced the Rearm Europe plan. The plan includes 800 billion euros, which is about $840 billion. EU Parliament President Roberta Metsola, did I pronounce that correctly? Metsola?
Sola, I don't know. She's Italian, probably, so I'm not the expert.
Well, she told the press, quote, "It's about time to put our money where our mouth is." This rearming, Christina, is it good news? And how reassured do you think Zelensky is that Europe has its back? All these decades, the United States has been providing military security for Europe. You know, the bases in Germany, you know, all over the place. Now Europe says, well, we're going to have to get our own armies up. Is that good news?
No, rearmament is good news. Never. And keep in mind, I'm from Germany. 80 years ago, we set the world on fire, basically, in World War II. We destroyed Europe and a lot more. But back right there after World War II, nobody dared to talk about rearming Germany. I know that it's been a while ago. I know. But for decades, that was a difficult topic in Germany. That we joined the NATO even was a big problem in the German public. Like there were a lot of people who said, no, let's not join any military defense systems. We should stay out of that. For good reason. Now, obviously, we are a member of the NATO because West Germany thought that would be a good idea, while East Germany was an ally of the Soviet Union. But even the rearmament back then was a big problem. Now, we have, especially when Germany was reunited, the allies, the former allies, United States, Great Britain, France, were scared of Germany becoming too powerful again because the war was not that long ago. So we had to try and make sure everybody knew that we were peaceful. And now suddenly we are supposed to spend all of our money on arms and rearm. I mean, obviously we have an army. It's not a very powerful one because nobody wanted us to have that. And suddenly we are supposed to do that again. I know times have changed. I understand. But no, it does not reassure me. And it's not because I think Germany would use the weapons and the army to set the world on fire again. Not necessarily. But I think spending money on weapons and arms is always a stupid idea. We should spend it on something else. Obviously, we can't because there are, I'm sorry, I'm getting quite agitated, but there are egotistical, horrible men like Putin thinking that they have to attack another country, the Ukraine. We should spend that money on other stuff. Definitely. But obviously, we can't. We have to do something. And no, it's not reassuring me, but I think, unfortunately, at the moment, we have to do it. Because if we cannot fully rely on the United States to do what they have been doing for decades, also to keep Germany in check, by the way, the troops here in this area were also always meant to keep Germany in check. But anyways, if we can't rely on the United States fully, obviously, we have to do something ourselves. And I hate the idea, but I know that apparently now it's necessary.
Yeah, I kind of like hate the idea that we have such a huge part of our government budget going to defense. You know, they call it defense, but it's I don't think defense is really an accurate term for our military expenditures. But I hear what you're saying, but on the other hand, you know, Putin he poses a very real threat.
Yep. Yeah, he does. He does. And I'm sorry, I forgot the last part of the question, as always.
How reassured do you think Zelensky is that Europe has it back based on these expenditures?
I hope he is somewhat reassured. When it comes to, how do you say that in English, push or shove, will we be able, only Europe, to keep Putin away? I don't even want to think about it, but we have to think about the possibility.
That's where it seems like that's where we're at now.
Yeah, and I hope that Zelensky is somewhat reassured because he also has no other choice. Let's be honest. If Trump does not want to help him, then Europe is all he's got.
Mm-hmm. And Europe, as far as GNP goes, is quite substantial as far as in comparison with Russia.
That's sorry, I have to ask about that term. Do you mean that's the
gross to the domestic product?
Yes.
Economic power, basically.
Yes, economic power, money. Yeah.
That Europe can produce in comparison to Russia is an enormously, off balance, way superior to what Russia can do. So that's good, anyway.
Yes, that is something. Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why you've attained all this economic power is because you didn't waste a lot of money on military expenditures over the past.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, what you said now is if you take all of Europe together, like Russia is no match in terms of economy. If you take the individual countries, then it's always also different. It's not like the European Union says how much you have to spend on that, on arms and etc. It's the individual country that decides it. And I don't know about the other countries. I think Great Britain and France spend quite a bit of money on that compared to Germany. I say for historical reasons, Germany tried to stay out of that. It was even a big problem when there was the war against Afghanistan and Iraq. Where I think we even mentioned that in the last time. It's difficult for us to be part. We always offer support in other ways. Like we always offer money. We always offer doctors or whatever. But being really in the conflict is difficult for us. So yeah, I think that is also one of the reasons why we try to stay out of that. But if you can spend money on other stuff, of course, that's a good thing. I mean, we now just there was in our parliament a decision to have a change about how much debt we can have, because we need money for, first of all, for the rearmament, and then we also need money for infrastructure, which is not so good at the moment. So I would prefer that we spend all the money on our infrastructure and not the arms. But as we said, it's not really possible at the moment.
Wasn't there an announcement by your prime minister to start a manufacturing plant to manufacture arms? Wasn't that a recent thing that just occurred within the past
I'm
6 months or
sure. I
so?
mean, we do have lots of weapon factories, anyways, in Germany. We export most of the weapons. If we kept all the weapons that we produced, we'd have no problems at all. We just export most of them. But it's entirely possible. I haven't heard about that specific thing, but yeah, could be. I don't think we have a shortage of arms factories or weapon factories in Germany, to be honest.
Yeah, Germany has lots of factories. Very,
Yeah,
very, yeah.
we export everything to everywhere, mostly.
Well, that's a good thing. There was a resolution passed by the UN General Assembly on the third anniversary of the invasion, and that resolution supported Ukraine's territorial integrity, condemning Russian actions with a 93 vote majority. Voting against that resolution were, of course, Russia, Belarus, North Korea, and 5 other nations, including the United States of America. Is it not a concern that the United States is siding with North Korea and Russia, supporting Putin's imperialistic ambitions, given such an abrupt change of an 80-year-old policy? You talked about this earlier, Christina, that, for all these decades, and we're talking almost a century now since the end of World War II, that the United States has kind of been like the bulwark of democracy, the champion of freedom. And now this abrupt change, just because we have a different president than we had prior to that. How concerning is that we had all these decades of going one way and now, boom, it's like a.
Yeah, sorry. It's extremely concerning, obviously. It's like, I remember in our last conversation here on the podcast, we talked about if it's a bit cynical that the United States present themselves as the fighters for freedom and liberty. And, we got into detail there. I don't have to repeat it all, but sometimes it felt a bit cynical. But this now is, I don't even know how to say that United States is on the same side as Russia or North Korea. It's unimaginable that this happens now. So, like, I have a hard time wrapping my head around it. And again, it is the government at the moment, the United States of America is not. I have a hard time believing that, and maybe this is a bit cliche, I don't know, but that a hardcore Texan Republican says, yes, let's side with Russia, let's do that. I somehow can't believe that. Since Russia has always been, or the Soviet Union has always been the enemy, it feels like I can't believe that the whole Republican Party would be behind that. Is it? But I don't know. But it is, just to answer the question, extremely concerning. Yes.
Well, here's my analysis of that. We're all part of groups here, and there's a hierarchy in groups. And right now, the leader of the group that is the Republican Party, he's all over the place. But whenever he says something, the people in that party are so afraid to say anything against what he says that even just like if you look at Reagan, back in when Reagan was president, it was completely opposite of what Trump is saying now. I mean, the Soviet Union was the evil empire now. What was the evil empire then? And now with Trump, he's our best buddy. And I think it has more to do with the way that groups function and people falling in line with what the alpha is saying for fear that the alpha will come after them. Elon Musk has said that if you don't agree with what we're doing here in Washington right now, I'm going to go ahead and put primary challenges to you Republicans that don't fall in line. And so if he throws
primary challenges, what is that?
A primary challenge is basically we have 2 elections before we get to the general election. We have each party, they have what's called primaries. So the people who want to get that nomination for the party, they have to have an election in May, where whoever wins that, what's called primary, ends up being on the ballot for the official election in November. And so if you have like a sitting congressman now who stands up against Trump, Elon Musk can throw millions of dollars into the campaign of the opponent who will be all the way with Trump. And he has threatened to primary these incumbents if they don't fall in line. So you don't see any Republicans in the Senate or in the House of Representatives standing up or saying anything against Trump, even though they may believe exactly what you said, that we cannot follow Putin and Russia, but they have to be quiet about it, at least not be public about it.
Unfortunately, this sounds a lot like in the 1930s in Germany, when a lot of people, industrialists, people with money, supported Hitler because they thought they would gain something from it. Sorry to say that, but that is, if you are a politician, you should follow your conscience. And I know that is not always the case. I know. But I assume it's the same in the United States as in Germany. Like, you don't have to agree with your party. You can actually disagree and also vote in a different way than the rest of your party. It's called, like, I don't know, here it's like a decision of the conscience. You can do that. I mean, you might have problems with your party afterwards, but that is always something you can do. And now would be the time to do something about it. But on the other hand, I feel like your political structure is different from ours here in Germany now. I have seen so many videos from Americans saying we don't have a king because Trump is behaving like a king. If you don't want to compare him to a dictator, then you can compare him to a king if you want. And yeah, it is true that just the president has so much more power in the United States than here in Germany. Basically, our president has no power at all anymore because of our whole trauma in World War II. Mm-hmm. So we changed all of that. But I feel in the United States, you try to, well, the president has all that power because this whole structure was worked out 200 years ago, and there maybe it made still sense. But you always have to hope that the person who becomes president does not abuse the power. And most of the time they didn't. But now you have apparently somebody who would like to abuse the power that he got, who doesn't think he has to compromise with anybody. Again, very childish. I can do whatever I want. I don't care what other people think. Yeah.
So, and over the course of those 200 years, we were initially set up with 3 equal branches of government. But over the course of those 200 years, the 2 other branches, the courts and the Congress, they ceded so much power to the presidency that's why we're stuck with what we got now. Mm-hmm. Childish is the correct way to describe that particular mindset.
He always reminds me so much of a spoiled brat. That is a term I like in the English language, a spoiled brat. That's what he appears to be. Yeah.
That's what he is. I just read in a BBC report that Germany pays the same amount of support to NATO as the United States, both contributing 16% of the overall budget. This is just administrative costs, I believe, that, keeping the building. But still, the United States and Germany combined 32% of the total budget. That's pretty. Does that surprise you that Germany pays as much?
Absolutely. It did surprise me so much that forgive me, but I had to check that. So I actually researched, I Googled the article from the BBC and read it. And then I could also see that it was mostly like administration, mm-hmm. upkeep, maintenance. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I did not think that Germany paid so much to the NATO, because the way you hear, especially what Trump always says, it feels like we don't pay anything, we don't contribute anything, but we do contribute just as much as the United States to the regular costs. And I mean, I think I read that the United States used to pay more, and then that was already reduced, because you were talking about the GDP. Was that the correct abbreviation? Yeah. The
Trump's main beef about this, and he's really, he doesn't really understand numbers like he claims he does, is that you're supposed to pay a certain percentage of your GDP, your gross domestic product.
Mhm.
And Poland is already up to 5%. I mean, they pay a lot of their economy into their defense because they're really afraid of Putin. And other countries such as Spain and I think Italy don't pay nearly as much percentage wise of their GDP for defense. Now, Trump acts as if that this is money that should be going in his pocket that they're not paying. So he's mad. And that's how he pretends that this is such a horrible thing. So, yeah, that's it. But as far as the budget of the operation of the command centers and all that, Germany pays an equal amount as the United States.
Which is, I find interesting because the United States has a higher GDP, obviously, than Germany. You make more money than we do. So there is sort of a rule that says how much each country has to pay according to how much money they make back home, how the economy is. But even if I know that Germany is very rich and we export all the goods, etc. But still, even if you compare that, still the United States makes so much more. So it would actually be only fair if they also paid more. But that was reduced because the United States complained about that. So now we pay the same amount to the still, even though it's not strictly paid for weapons and tanks and planes, etc. But you need the money nevertheless to keep the NATO going.
Right.
So wouldn't it be fair to take that into account when you say, but you pay that much to the overall costs? You don't really have to pay that much or spend that much on your own defense. I mean, we don't have to get into it because either way, I don't care, to be honest. But yeah, I was very surprised to hear that we paid that much. I never thought that, but it's good to know that now. It's good to know.
It's not really a big deal because you're talking really about administrative costs, building maintenance, and computers.
I don't know how that is in relative numbers, like how many billions of euros or dollars that would be. I have no idea.
I don't either. I didn't check it out.
Yeah, maybe I have to do some research then, how much that actually is. Yeah.
Okay, recently Germany had elections. Please share your opinion on the results of those elections and how they shape Germany's direction for the near future. How do you feel about what happened in your recent elections?
Well, it was not very surprising. There was a change in government. The Social Democrats and the Green Party and the FDP, which we call the Liberal Party, they formed the government, and then there were the elections, and then the Conservative Party got the majority, or well, not the majority, well, the relative majority. So now there is a coalition between the Conservative Party and the Social Democrats. And unfortunately, the party that I hate the most, the AfD, our extreme right-wing party, got around 20% of the votes, which does not mean like nobody will work together with them, but that is something we expected, unfortunately. Now, for the near future, I don't think probably you're interested in what happens within Germany. I think we can skip that. In terms of Europe and the Ukraine, I do not think that there will change much because I think all the parties agree that even the Green Party, who has a pacifist standpoint traditionally, even they agree that obviously we have to help the Ukraine. So I don't think much will change in terms of that. The Social Democrats government with Olaf Scholz supported the Ukraine, and now Friedrich Merz will be the new chancellor. He will support the Ukraine just as much as the other government did. So I don't think that will change much. No.
Okay, I am interested in it because there have been other European countries, particularly UK, Poland, who had at one point very conservative, very right-wing governments and they've had elections, and they kind of booted them out. And so, do you see in Germany more of a trend? Like you said that the IDF,
AfD, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
AfD, yeah. Mm,
AfD is the party that you hate the most.
yeah.
Do you see that they gained substantially in this past election, or you still think that they're still like more on the fringe?
No, they are not on the fringe anymore, but they have been gaining over the last 10 years, ever since 2015. That was the time when I don't know how well that is known in the States, but like we welcomed a lot of refugees from Afghanistan and Syria because other countries in the European Union were overwhelmed, like Italy and Greece. So in 2015 was the year where our chancellor back then, Angela Merkel, said we have to change that. We have to take in more refugees in Germany. We can afford it. And then we had in 1 year about 1 million refugees arriving, which put a strain on administration and housing, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when the AfD started to gain support. They were originally just like the Brexit party, they were anti-Euro, and then they started to become more and more extreme right-wing. In terms of what we actually, they are under surveillance by our, how do you say that? Probably the equivalent would be the FBI. I don't know really.
Okay, your police state.
Yes, they are under surveillance because they are so extreme, and in my opinion, they should be abolished actually with a proper formal court, etc., trial, etc. But that should happen, but it hasn't happened yet. So, anyways, after all of these refugees came to Germany, they used the fear of the people to start propaganda. You can't say anything else. And they totally changed their direction from anti-Euro to extreme right-wing. And yes, they have started to gather most support in the former Eastern German states for different reasons. In the former west of Germany, not as much, but still a lot. And I was aware that 20% was pretty realistic if you take all of Germany together. And yeah, they scare me a bit and they should be abolished, in my opinion. But so far, they are still around. And I might have mentioned that also last time, they flirt with the Nazi language. It is not allowed to use any of the Nazi symbols. That they know that is illegal. They do not do that. They dance around it. They use phrases. One of their leaders likes to use phrases that sound like Nazi language, go into that direction. So that is like one reason they should totally be abolished. And yeah, I don't see them actually. I believe I could be wrong. Like I don't see the future. I do not think that they will gain more support. I think the Social Democrats lost a lot of support over the last 50 years, unfortunately, but the Conservative Party is still quite strong. The Green Party is still quite strong. And there is another party to the far left that also gains more support. So I do not think that they could be in the government at any point. I'm just trying to convince myself that that will never happen, but I hope so, and I don't think so. And I don't think maybe what changes because of the AfD is that some of the parties are becoming a bit more lenient. Is that the term? They are adopting not like the phrases that the extreme right would use, but they are like, how do you say that? I'm sorry, I'm trying to gather my thoughts here.
The way I like to differentiate ideologies is cruelty versus decency. And
Yeah.
when you say the word lenient, it could be that there are more people who are just more decent, who are believing that is a better way to go. And like AFD is like all about cruelty.
They are. They are. And but no, what I was trying to say is that maybe the Conservative Party tries to have more standpoints against, for example, taking in more refugees, which they did not have under Angela Merkel. That is a recent development, and I think they do that to try to get support away from the AFD. They are not as extreme as the AFD is, but they're shifting a bit towards, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. But oh, decency is a nice word. Yeah, I wish politicians remember that sometimes, that they're supposed
I'm trying to tell them to use it, but they're not listening to me. Hey, we had a similar situation as far as, the like we had the Tea Party, which started out, and what that basically was, they said taxed enough already, so they used the word tea, and they tried to align themselves with the Boston Tea Party of the American Revolution time. But it was really Obama being president is what caused that, because they didn't want the black man, and so they came up with this. But that is another group that morphed using the taxed enough already moniker. They morphed into right-wing extremism. And that's kind of like following what happened with the AFD and the Tea Party. Very similar path, it seems like to me.
What I wanted to say, because again, I digressed, but you said that they were voted out of the government, like the extreme right in other countries, like in Great Britain or the UK and in Poland. I hope we will never have to even think about that, because I don't think the AfD will get into that position. I have so much I believe so much in the most of the American people. I should probably believe a little bit more in the German people as well.
Well, this was an even Steven election. It was really close. I think it was the 2 million differentiated between Trump and Kamala Harris. So we're still very much it could go either way. Biden got elected, Obama got elected twice, and Trump got elected twice. So
yeah. And may I just say, we miss Barack Obama so much.
He and his wife put together a production company, and and it's on Netflix. It's called Our Oceans, and he's the narrator of it. And I sit with my granddaughters, and we watch Our Oceans all the time, because they have whales and all kinds of different sea animals and everything, and it's really it's great. And he's such a calming voice too. The way he's a good narrator. Anyway, last time you were on this show, you stated that Trump was not as bad as Hitler. That the result of Hitler was the death of tens of millions in camps and military actions. This has been a rough few months, Christina, for America and the world. Are you now more worried than before you were last time we spoke about Trump's destructive potential, given what you have observed so far?
I would be lying if I said no. Yes, I am more worried now, because I did not believe that so many bad things would happen so fast. A lot of things, like in the first 2 days where he signed all of these presidential, like
executive orders.
Yeah, these executive orders. I mean, thank goodness there are courts that gave me hope, where courts stopped some of the orders. But I mean, I think all you have to know is that the German government now issued, next to a warning for Germans to travel to the United States, because
travel advisories. They call them travel advisories.
It's not really a warning, but it is, make sure you don't do this and this and this and this, because Germans have been detained at the border for weeks, apparently, sometimes without getting support or a translator or an interpreter or whatever. And I mean, there was this case of the one guy who even has a green card and lives legally in the US, and they deported him. Yeah, I actually, I wanted to travel to the United States, because I have a lot of friends who came over actually to Germany, who I met in Germany. And at some point, I wanted to meet them in the States. I wanted to see the country. At the moment, I would not. I don't think about it, and that is very sad, but I wouldn't feel safe in in the country that always claims to be, as you said, the leader of the democratic world. But I, at the moment, and this is not against, you know, that not against you or any of the wonderful people that I know live over there, but it's obviously because of what then the police do, or your, you know, border
ICE,
ICE. Yes.
Immigration Control Enforcement Agency. Yeah.
And I mean, you know, I would only want to go over there on vacation. But then if you're not sure if you can even get into the country, or if you would then be detained in a prison cell for simply because, I don't know, there's a problem with your visa or something. I mean, no, that scares me. So I do not even think about traveling there. And I have to say that it surprises me that it got so bad so fast. And I always feel, probably because we Germans, we like Hitler is like the worst person ever in history. So we
Mm-hmm.
have a hard time comparing anybody else to him. We feel that's not fair. Um, and now obviously Trump has not killed millions of people.
Yeah,
So
correct. True, true.
so on the other hand, then I thought, that was a thought that came to me like a few days ago. Well, Trump is just stupid. Like he's childish and he's stupid. But then on the other hand, Hitler was also stupid. It's not that he was a very intelligent person. He was a fanatic and apparently charismatic. People saw something in him, and that's how he became so powerful. And if you look at Trump, I mean, again, you know, all my problems with that comparison, but he's also stupid. People find him charismatic for some reason, and that's how he became the president of the United States. Yeah, now he has a lot of power. The question is, what will he do to keep that power, or even to get more power? Um, will he break the law to do it? Will
He's
he?
breaking the law every day.
Oh,
All
okay.
the all these things he's doing are illegal. They're against statutes that were passed by Congress and signed into law by other presidents, but he's just ignoring them. So yeah, you know, clearly, and like you said earlier, the courts have so far stood firm, but we'll see how far that goes, because in America, you can have one judge say something, and then they can appeal that ruling and go up to the United States Supreme Court eventually. And we don't have a very trustworthy situation in the United States Supreme Court at all right now. They actually said that in the last, during Biden's presidency, there was a case that was brought for Trump, against Trump, and it was taken to appeal to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled that he could actually do criminal activity as long as it was called an official act. So if he engaged in criminal activity, but it was an official act, he is immune from prosecution. This is what our Supreme Court ruled during the Biden administration about Trump. Whenever they were trying to prosecute Trump for the crimes he committed on January 6th, stealing the documents, the Mar-a-Lago documents, and all that. So it's scary. Last question. From your personal perspective as a citizen of Germany, the EU, and a resident of this tiny blue planet, do you have a feeling of optimism or pessimism for how things are going to turn out?
It's a tough one
We ask
because
tough questions here in the Connected Convergence.
absolutely, I knew that before I came
That's
onto
why
the
we
show.
needed your intelligence, because of the tough questions that needed to be handled.
Well, let me put it this way. I don't think pessimism helps your mental health or the government or your country. Pessimism does not help. I can understand why you have grounds for pessimism. All the reasons are there, obviously, not just if you live in the States, also in Germany. I mean, I have reasons for pessimism ever since the AfD had gained so much support. And also the war in the Ukraine, Brexit, everything. There's so many reasons for pessimism. On the other hand, I also thought, and I'm not trying to try to say it's not bad at the moment. We know that both. We've been talking about it for an hour now. But then I thought, when I think back, there was always reasons to be pessimistic. I remember when I just finished school, 18, that was in 2001. And shortly before I finished school, there was 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had terrorist attacks, not just in the States, in Europe, everywhere. And I remember we went to London with our school, and there were books laid out in front of the American embassy where you could sign and say, your condolences or whatever you wanted to say. I remember writing in that book. And I remember that we were scared everywhere we went because you never knew, you were in a metropolis like London or Berlin or Munich, anything could happen. And I remember being scared there for months. And then, the war in the Ukraine is just the latest reason beforehand. Then when the right-wing governments in Europe got more support, different countries. I remember when they started the Brexit show. I always call it just the Brexit show because it was a show. I always sat there and thought, this is not happening. This is so stupid. Why is that happening? So there's always reasons to be pessimistic, in my opinion, but it does not help. So I try to be optimistic. And it makes me optimistic when I see your face here on my computer, obviously in the opposition in the United States.
And I'm not alone either. I am not alone.
You're not. I know. And that is, I work, that. I work as a tour guide, partly. And I just had my first tour of the season a few days ago. And I had the Jewish tour where I talk about the Jewish history here in my town. And I had mostly Americans in that tour. And after the tour, there's always, the saying goodbye ceremony. And there's so many people who hugged me and said, it's so bad in the United States right now. I hope you know, we are not in favor of that. We are against that. And I said, yeah, I know. Don't you worry. I know how many good people are in the United States. So, and then that's also a reason to be optimistic, But I think what maybe I have to do here in Germany is I have to become more active in I have never been a very political person. I mean, I do vote all the time because I think it's so important. I would never miss an election, but I have never been personally very active in politics. And I think we might have to start becoming more active. I mean, you're doing something obviously with your podcast here. I have to find something I can do apart from going to the elections. I think that's important.
Well, what you just said is encouraging to the point of inspiring, that we can't be pessimistic and allow our pessimism to eliminate our activism. We have to be optimistic that we're going to have a better country by getting involved in what we have to do in order to make it better. And that's why pessimism is not helpful. It's not healthy. It's not going to do any good at all. So let's stick with it. We have to be realistic as what's in front of us, but we also can be optimistic. Christina, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful discussion, and I hope our viewers get a real good sense of how things are in Germany based on what you presented here tonight. And it's just so much appreciated. And we're going to be talking together soon. And when you do come to America, boy, you better look up, because Bobby and I are going to get you dinner. We're going to buy you dinner. We'll have a good reunion there.
Much, Paul. I'm really grateful that you want to hear my opinion about things here, the German view or the European view. And I would really love at some point to travel to the United States and meet you all there and have dinner somewhere. I'd love that, even though at the moment, I feel
we're not going to Europe because we're afraid to fly now. he fired air traffic controllers. I don't want to get on a plane right now for that reason. Yeah, how who's guiding the plane down to the runway? It's frightening. It really is.
It is, but it's going to get better. We're doing our part as far as we can.
We are.
And at some point, I'm going to visit you over there.
Okay.
We're going to have dinner. Okay.
All right. See you then. And all you out there in Cyberland, thanks for listening. Until next time. For Christina, I'm Paul Thomas. Bye now.
Bye.
Good show. Good show. I knew it was going to be good. I didn't realize it was going to be this good.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Hey, we'll see you next time. And I'm going to keep you in mind for the Elon Musk show.
Yeah, just send me an email and I'd be happy to be there.
Okay. All right. Talk later.